Good afternoon, everyone. Brad Baker here again with the Ontario Bat Network, or a relatively new organization, which came together following the second Ontario Bat meeting hosted by Toronto Zoo in 2019. Following that meeting, we came together in an effort to ensure that the third Ontario Bat meeting happened. Unfortunately, COVID happened, and here we are now with our speaker series as an alternative in an effort to get current research and bat work out to the broad Ontario Bat community. Derek Morningstar is also part of the Ontario Bat Network, and he is here to introduce our speaker, Steven Kell.
All right, that's over to me, I guess. Then, yes, I'm pleased to be able to introduce our next speaker here, Steven Kell. So, for as long as he can remember, Steven has always loved the creatures that creeped, crawled, slithered, and slimed. Specializing in reptiles, he spent 6 summers working in Algonquin Park as a researcher, helping lead the long-term turtle and salamander project there. For his master's research, he investigated communal nesting behaviors in painted turtles and looked at the impact of roads on turtle populations. Now the species at risk biologist at the Shawanaga First Nation. For the last 2 years, he's been establishing Shawanaga's species at risk program. While this program started primarily focused on reptiles, it's grown since then and now includes the winged and four-legged and swimming SAR, including bats, Algonquin wolf, and sturgeon. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Steven. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you, Derek. Can everyone hear me fairly well? Take that as hopefully that's a yes.
Yes, we can hear you great, Steven.
Okay, great. Thanks, Derek. Yeah, so today I'm going to be talking to you about a project that myself and Derek have been working on for the last year or so. Called Under the Rails, a newly discovered type of bat hibernacula. And I thought this project, it would be cool to share with this new sort of webinar series. Although this project is pretty preliminary, and we do just sort of have some beginning results back. I thought it'd be sort of a neat opportunity to share with you sort of the bat work at Shawanaga. Is sort of a combination of sort of like the bat work that we've done is sort of been built up through a whole bunch of different partners. And a lot of that has to do with sort of the bat network or the groups of people that are focusing on bats in Ontario. And like the introduction sort of had said, the Species at Risk project at Shawanaga was really focused to start focused on reptiles, and that is my background as well. I'm a reptile specialist, so I'm not. I will say that I'm not a bat expert on here, although I have tried to learn a lot. I've been trying to absorb as much from others, especially Derek, as much as possible. Trying to ask a lot of questions. I am not a bat expert, so if I do say something that's incorrect, I'm sorry. I'll have to direct certain things maybe back to Derek at the end. But yeah, talking about the bats today at the Shawanaga program. Oops, that's from another presentation. Yeah, so intro. So as a lot of you, I'm sure you'll know, bats are facing white nose syndrome, and that is one of the main threats that our 8 species are facing, specifically the 4 that are now considered at risk. And as well, locations of hibernaculum are very important to be known for protection. And they're not well documented in Ontario, especially along the shores of Eastern Georgian Bay. I'll show a map in a second. There aren't really any known hibernacula documented in that region. And so knowing any of these, if they are present, is extremely important for the species survival. And so when we first started our Species at Risk project, it was very exploratory, sort of trying to figure out what SAR species at risk are around Shawanaga First Nation and their traditional territory. So for part of that, we were going out looking for turtles and snakes, and I happened to come across one of these tunnels at a wetland. I thought it was kind of strange, but didn't think too much about it until attending a workshop where Derek was hosting, and I brought it up to him, and Derek was super intrigued by it. Yeah, definitely thought that there that there could be something there. So yeah, I went out sort of exploring a little bit more and came across 2 more tunnels sort of in a similar location. And so then Derek and I had sort of started planning from then on. And what's kind of neat is that this railway, or I guess I could say the tunnels that we found go underneath the railway. Yeah, I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. And the railway was first constructed sort of in the 1800s. So it's been established there, and these tunnels that we're finding are have been there for a long time. You could say that. So the location that we're working on is within Shawanaga First Nation traditional territory. And so you can see we're on the eastern course of Georgian Bay. And then the field site specifically, so Shawanaga has 3 different land parcels shown here in red, as well as we're working on a Indigenous protected and conserved area as well on Shawanaga Island. So that's why that's also highlighted. But this sort of stretch within this photo here is sort of the section of railway that we're working on within Shawanaga's immediate traditional territory. And so we found 3 originally. And so we really wanted to figure out, are these getting used? So what we did, Derek and I had applied for a species at risk stewardship program funds. And the purpose of that project was to basically explore this as much as possible and see if bats are using these for possibly swarming in the fall, and also possibly hibernating, because the caves did have a good potential initial look to them as a hibernation or swarming sites. And we just wanted to know, are these tunnels, like, was this just like a fluke that we found a couple of them in this area, or are these sort of scattered amongst the railway and maybe could lead to possibly a whole bunch of swarming or hibernation sites all along the whole section of railway, possibly throughout Ontario or even throughout Canada. And so with our species at risk funding that we got for this project specifically, the project funding, the species at risk project is through fully through the Aboriginal Fund Species at Risk. But for this project specifically, we got it during the pandemic, so we weren't able to do everything that we originally wanted to on that project. So we weren't able to go in the tunnels. So we were hoping that we could do some tunnel entry in the fall, winter time to see if bats are actually occupying those tunnels, which would sort of confirm right away if there be bats in there. We were hoping to do some tracking as well to see if they're moving between hibernation sites, or maybe be able to locate other possible sites as well. And then also try to confirm the presence or absence of white nose syndrome in these populations. If it is a hibernaculum, is that present, and is that a threat to these populations, but then also the populations in and amongst Shawanaga as well. We have a couple maternity roosts that we're monitoring, so we want to make sure that these populations are as healthy as possible. So we weren't able to do those aspects, but we were able to do a couple others and then almost expand on those. So we were able to go up and explore the railway. So we had CP Rail, we worked with them, and they sent a flagger out for us. So we actually were able to go by high rail and travel the whole corridor very safely, making sure that no trains were coming. And then we could get out and sort of check underneath at multiple different places to look for any sort of tunnels or anywhere that looked like there could be a potential tunnel. And so because we couldn't do part of the project, we had more time to do other things. So originally we were just going to survey throughout the 2 main land parcels that the railway runs through. But we had enough time that we're actually able to cover almost the entire section. The map will come back up. So almost the entire section shown, we were able to cover that whole stretch, which was really good. And then we put up acoustic monitors at 6 of the best sites as well. And then we're also doing acoustics again this spring. So here's the map again. So yeah, we were able to cover this entire stretch, which I should have thrown a scale bar up here. It's probably about 30, I'm just gonna say 30 kilometers worth. I don't know the exact amount, but I'll say about 30 kilometers stretch. And what we found in that stretch, so we had 3 originally. So we found 11 tunnels in total in that, including those 3 original ones. So 6 which were these large tunnels, and then 4 smaller tunnels, one of those being collapsed. And so you can see here in the pictures, with reference, Derek, in the photo there, they're quite big tunnels. Like you could walk into them. We just sort of peeked into the front of them, was able to shine lights in there, like a depth gun to try through both entrances to try to figure out how long they were, if they're bending. And so yeah, we found 6 of these large ones, all varying in sizes from one was sort of short, you could see directly through it, to other one that was greater than 80 meters long, with bends, drops, all sorts of things. Like even the one that was short, like it's big enough that you could almost drive a car through. So, and just varying in sizes. So then there's also these smaller ones that we found, and varying in different sort of wetnesses as well. So some of these smaller ones were very dry, almost completely dry, and then other ones are sort of half filled with water too. So with the variety, we're hoping that there's going to be a possibility that these can function as a hibernaculum location. And what we figured out that these tunnels are used for is because the railway had been there since the 1800s. These are basically blasted and pickaxed culverts that the railway sort of put in originally when it first went through, to hopefully not have any washouts. And so a lot of the time they're connecting wetlands and being used as a basically rock culvert. So a lot of them do have flowing water through them, but with the dips and drops, there's almost always air pockets in there. And then they're in a variety of habitats, from hardwood forests to rock outcrops. So would suggest that if there is bats using there would be multiple species that could also use them. So here's just a comparison. So here's a couple of the tunnels here. So you can see with these aerial shots, just the differences in habitats. So we have sort of like a very rocky outcrop tunnel, wetlands on either side, wetlands on one side, and then just in a completely forested area. So a lot of variation on where these tunnels are, which is good, because if they are suggesting that this is a hibernaculum, there's a lot of potential for where these could be and how they could be used. So here's some raw data on passes per night, sort of over the system over the season that we had the monitors up. And so you can see, I know passes don't necessarily mean that there's multiple individuals there, since it could be sort of one individual passing multiple times past the detector. But we do have some decent numbers suggesting that there are bats at least present, or at least one bat, I guess, present at these locations. And sort of all of them had a at least some activity as well. Definitely some that were a lot better than others. But we were pretty happy about this for being such like a new little discovery that we weren't quite sure, but we're super hopeful. So we were pretty happy that we did have activity at these locations to start, and we're super excited to continue going forward. And then we were also fairly excited too about seeing the diversity between the sites. So they weren't all made up of the same bat species as well. Some sites were favoring other bats or like a particular bat species, whereas others favored another one, which was also kind of interesting as well, presumably based on the habitat. But it's nice to see that if these are potential hibernacula, that there's a variation in conditions that are gonna favor one species versus the other. And then going forward, hopefully we'll be able to, if we can confirm that these are hibernacula, that we can get proper protection in place for these, since they'll be very important places for those species protection. So we have some next steps. So we currently have the detectors up again to sort of try to confirm if any bats are coming out of those tunnels, trying to get those recordings. And then we're hoping that later this year we can possibly get full confirmation of presence in those tunnels. And then we're also hoping that depending on funding, if we can do some tracking. We do have MODIS towers up in the area, so we're hoping to sort of include that as a portion, as well as telemetry, seeing where these bats go, and then it'll link back into the Shawanaga Species at Risk program as well, and looking at maternity roosts and roosts for different bat species and how they're moving around within Shawanaga. Yeah, so that's sort of the start of the preliminary results that we have. And yeah, I'd like to expand on any questions. My contact info is there. So yeah, if we have any questions, I'll try to answer, and if I can't, I'm sure Derek can. So
Thank you so much, Steve. That was a great presentation. What we'll do is, if anyone has questions, can we just get you to do the hand raise? It's pretty interesting information. You wouldn't think really that bats might be using underpasses that way. Have you looked? Is there much in the way of other overwintering habitat for bats in the area, Steve?
We have a lot of rock outcrop. There are like cliffy sort of sections, but it is a relatively flat area. You'd have to go a bit more east from the bay to get like areas with a bit more elevation than you might have caves in. We were hoping as well, we couldn't do it for part of this project, but we were hoping to include traditional knowledge from the community and have an event where we can have community members come in and then possibly tell us of caves that they might know within the area as well, and try to expand it that way. But the original sort of purpose was just to see, like, are there more of these tunnels, and is there a possibility that bats could use them? And yeah, that's what it's suggesting so far. So pretty happy with the results that we've got from sort of doing this over the last year, and hopefully see where it goes going forward.
Excellent. We've got a question from Philip. Go ahead, Philip.
Hey, Steve, great talk. I was wondering if you guys are gonna put out eye buttons or something to look at temperature profiles. Is that, like, even if you go in there and there are no bats, there might have been bats in the past before white nose. And, you know, if you have stable enough temperature profiles, especially in the middle of those passages, sorry, that was my dog, you know, that might have been a suitable place for bats before white nose.
Yeah, great question. So we were only able to sort of enter just the sort of entrances of the tunnels and take temperature readings there. Yeah, we had hoped that we could have, with the funding, because of the sort of COVID bat relationship there, we weren't able to, based on funding, to basically come in close contact with bats. But we had originally hoped that we could sort of enter the tunnels, take sort of temperature readings, like moisture, the conditions that you would need to sort of figure out if it might be suitable. And so, yeah, we're hoping that maybe in the second, if we can get some second year funding on this, that we can investigate that further. But yeah, great question.
Excellent.
And yeah, feel free to, Derek, if you want to step in at all too on the question.
Yeah, I think that the catch there was permitting. It was funding, but also permitting, because as probably lots of you know, we weren't allowed to get up close to bats last year. So they didn't want us going into the tunnels where bats could be hibernating or even in torpor or just resting. We did this in late August, so they wouldn't necessarily be in there yet anyway. So it wasn't too big a concern, but yeah, that was the goal. We originally did want to put eye buttons or some kind of temperature loggers in there for the winter, but unfortunately that wasn't part of the project yet, and we're hoping it will be in the future. But the point is, we got really good indications. Like, I do lots of acoustics, and right there was quite a bit of activity in all three of the myotis, which was quite encouraging. So yeah, I think it's a really good sign for the future.
And with no more activity, I will just say thank you on behalf of the Ontario Bat Network and everybody here, Steve. It's a great presentation, and we will definitely all look forward to seeing more about what happens in your work to come.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have, I wasn't sure when I originally signed up what the timelines on this, so we were hoping that we could have some of the spring acoustics back to add as well, but maybe an update for the future. So
maybe at the next Ontario Bat meeting, you can present in person again. Fingers
Sure.
crossed, right?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
all.
having me.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
problem. Thank you for doing the presentation. We'll look forward to hearing back from you.